part of you. It's the part of you on the other side of the veil that misses the part of you that literally is blind to that part. You have awakened to the possibility that there's more to you than meets the eye, and so many have not. They look around, they don't believe it. They just want to see what they want to see and move on, and they're pleased with it, and there's no judgment of any of them. But the old soul awakens to what they remember, and that is that in you there is the Creator. If I could tell you about home, you wonder why you ever leave. And you do. At the wind of birth, when parts of you split out and come to this planet, I will tell you what the rest of you does. It sits there and waits for you to connect. Did you know that? Can you imagine, we've said it before, can you imagine being split from your loved ones? And not knowing if you'll ever hear from them again, and yet the veil is paper thin for you. You can see them walking around and you're always saying, look at me, look this way, maybe you'll glimpse me. And they never do. But when some of them do, you know what that connection feels like? I'm talking to those of you right now who have felt this. You've awakened to the point where you've looked up and we're there. The hand comes down and says, what took you so long? That's home talking to you. The big H. It's where you belong. It's where you always have been. Eons before this galaxy was ever here. Through other universes, the creative source has existed and you've been part of it. You're old. And at the same time, you're new, because time is in a circle. Never ends. Never ends. The circle has no beginning or an end, and that's who you always have been. That's home. Love is pure. Then you can believe. Without any judgment and agendas. So pure. It's what you always wanted it to be. It's what you dream it should be. That's who you are. That's the who. I want to revisit this because you really need to understand that there's something going on here where you need to revisit the core. The energy of God that you want to touch is you. You are part of this so supremely. And if you don't go there and you don't understand it and you want to assign it to a higher power that is not you, you'll never make the connection. And it's so important that you make the connection. And I'll tell you why. The physics of love is profound. And when we started talking about dark and light on this planet, we tried to give you metaphors, axioms, laws that said light is active, dark is passive. The definition of dark is a attribute where there's no light. So darkness doesn't even exist. It's simply the absence of something that does exist, light. Now let me tell you something that I have not discussed freely with you before because it wasn't needed, but it is now because you're changing a paradigm that you should be aware of. Let me ask you, are you aware that the physics of consciousness right now on the planet allows for darkness to be active when it needs to be? Did you realize that there are energies that feed on fear? Did you know you can create them? Human beings have the power to create active darkness if they want to, because they are very powerful. And some do. Now you got names for that. And there's a lot of names. And it's so interesting that you often assign those names to some kind of spiritual source. It's a fallen angel. It started there in the sky with the creative source, but it didn't do something right, so it fell from heaven, and now it's bad. Oh, how human of you. It's like a bad movie. And I want to tell you that did not happen. But you want to call them evil spirits, and you want to call them demons, and you want to assign darkness to them, and you want to make them this and that. I want to give you some information you need to know. These are human generated, and they're real. This planet has been open to these kinds of things because human nature has allowed it, and human consciousness has allowed it. The darkness part of humanity has allowed it. And what is going to get rid of it is you falling in love with yourself. What is going to get rid of it is you falling in love with yourself and understanding the core. This is the core issue. Who are you? Where is home? When you drop into the core, what does it mean? The laws of conscious physics will not allow darkness in with a human being who is active in loving themselves. Disease will not invade the human being who is actively involved in loving themselves. Cellular structure will become more quantum with the human being who is actively involved in loving themselves. I could go on and on and on. I want you to conjure up something. In your imagination, I want you to see the darkest thing you can imagine, the most horrific thing you've ever seen in a movie. I want you to line up legions of demons as far as you can see them, and I want you to picture yourself alone about to walk through them. Now I want you to picture yourself as a ball of light, and the physics of the light that you have repels them as you walk. And as you walk and you touch them and you give them light, they morph. And pretty soon the room is filled with life, and there's not one of them left, and there's no fear, and they cannot feed on anything. And what you have done is to change the planet itself and the very fabric of existence. How about that? That's the way it works. If you were to ask a Pleiadian, did darkness exist on their planet, and where did it come from? They would give you a list of things that are extinct. Is it true, Kryon, that there are those from outside the Earth's influence that actually come here and feed on the fear of humanity? And the answer is yes, you knew that. And the reason we never had to tell you about that is because you weren't part of it. Not really, because you're a light worker, aren't you? Or are you? The planet is turning a corner. The consciousness of humanity is starting to accelerate in its wisdom and its intelligence. And these are the things you have to know. Lightworker, listen. Healer, listen. You can walk into this puzzle with this ball of light that you have that has to do with love and integrity, and nothing is going to touch you. You can go to work into the darkest places, and nothing is going to touch you. You can go and heal those who are diseased, and nothing is going to touch you. Because of what you are generating from home. Imagine carrying a piece of home with you. It's time to wake up to the possibilities of the grandness and the magnificence of who you are. And when this starts to occur, everything starts to change. Everything starts to change. Self-worth, human being, old soul, starts to increase because you have the wisdom to see who you are. When you start to see what you can do, how you feel, how you can heal, how your life is starting to actually change, do you know what that does to self-worth? It increases it because you realize your value to the planet, to the universe, to the creative source. And you can glimpse a little bit of home. I want to close this by asking you, pleading with you, to start glimpsing a little home. In your meditations, when you talk to yourselves, I want you to remind them where they're from. The love of God is who you are. You are love. And none of the processes and none of the things that I told you about are going to work until there's an acknowledgement of this. It's going to change the planet. To come a day when the negative things that you see right now on your news will never, just simply won't be there. Hundreds of years have taken place since you had marauding armies of conquerors and clashing with swords and shields and all of those things. You don't expect to turn on the news and see that that's coming, do you? Will there come a day when you turn on the news and you won't expect what you see today either? It'll be that different. It'll be that different. The idea of humans killing each other on purpose for effect will be barbaric. You won't even see it as human. Because when you touch this planet with home, the planet starts to resound and others start to remember what you know. The grids of the earth start to resound with it. The planet is in transition, dear one. I want you to be an active part of the transition, old soul, and I want you to start loving yourself, and this is the message of the day. And when you do, there is a reciprocation that you won't believe. When you listen, when you love a human being and they love you back, there's nothing like it, right? Can you imagine reaching up and taking the hand of your higher self and feeling the reciprocation? Welcome home, welcome home, welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home. And so it is.
So with that, I invite you to close your eyes and allow the tension in your body to drain away and dissolve. Relax your head, relax your shoulders, relax your arms and hands, relax your chest, relax your back, relax your thighs, your knees, your calves, and your feet. And beneath your feet, you may feel, sense, or imagine the energy of the earth connecting in with you. And if there's anything you wish to release as part of the dissolving of tension within your body, you may send that into Mother Gaia. For she is the ultimate place where you can transmute the energies you no longer wish to have, and then she will make those available to you as renewed energy. And so feel that loving energy and embrace from Mother Earth pushing up through your feet and pushing up through your body right into your heart, where you can receive the unconditional love of a planet that knows you by name, knows every footstep you have stepped upon her. And in that feeling of gratitude for how much we are loved by Mother Gaia, you may also feel a little tingling above your head from those who are from the stars, who are watching you in this moment. And standing with them is an entire galactic family that knows you by name and knows what it is you are doing. And allow those energies from the stars to trickle down through your crown and pushing into your heart. And so that your heart now sits there beating with the fibers of light from the earth and the fibers of light from the stars. And as these melding filaments of light expand within your heart, they now push out from your heart and into the globe, sending it to all those we share the planet with. And as we sit in this energetic posture, we say to dear Kryon, thank you for being here. Thank you for loving us, Kryon. We are ready to come a little closer.
Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. Normally, we start out and say, come a little closer. And that is the entrance always of what is called the Circle of 12. But instead, I just gave you another kind of salutation because this is also a channel. Now, some of you have no idea that there would be even a difference, but there is. But tonight it's both. We're going to do something unusual in this Circle of 12. Not only is it for those who are here in the chairs listening to create an energy of information and beauty, but also for those who regularly listen to the channelings, which are presented, all of them. My partner and my partner's partner were in that great land of the ancients of Egypt for 1 month, and they've just returned. And in those weeks and those meetings and those channelings, every time my partner sat down, it was the same subject. But the subject was given in stages, in teaching modules, you might say. And they all reflected around a man named Woe. And all of the parables we have ever given have featured a man named Woe. And it really isn't a man, but because my partner is that gender, he speaks of him in that way. It's really a woe man. So it is a genderless human being who goes through teaching or adventure or puzzles. That's what parables are. The subject that has been for 14 channels in Egypt was the discovery of self. And if you go to the place where the channels are located, you can find all of them. All 14. Each one was a lesson for Woe. He was discovering from the beginning who he was, what was going on with him that he never knew about, the attributes of God that were larger than he ever thought, his connection with the divine. He learned it all. 14 lessons. This is number 15. The circle of 12 is always a metaphor, and it's always the same one up to a point. And if you listen closely, even to the keynote speaker of today, she spoke of this. There is no difference, dear one, between that which is a human and that which is a soul, except the experience and the dimension you're in. The soul is always there. We have told you many, many times, it has no beginning. It has no end. The human part of you does. And you come and go from this central point that is sacred and beautiful and unimaginable to a brain that you have on this earth. There are those who say, I can think as high as you ask me to. I am not limited, Kryon. You say I'm limited. You don't know that you're limited. A fool does not know they are a fool. A human does not understand what a greater consciousness that is not a human would be like. And that's the way of it. And so to try to describe to you a multidimensional soul that you have is almost impossible. We can tell you of its grandeur, of its beauty, of its existence. And in the circle of 12, we can take you across a metaphoric bridge to that place. And we have for a year and a half. There you have met your own past lives. You have examined your Akashic record. You've talked to those who offended you, and you've loved and hugged and all of the things that you could possibly do in a soul you cannot necessarily do while you are in the four-dimensional state. There is permission given when you cross that bridge to become part of that which you don't even understand. That's the beauty of this new energy. The speaker today spoke of trust. What happens when you press the remote control? And she was right. We have used a metaphor of getting into your car, and when you do, you don't read the manual of how it works. You just go. That is pure intent. You know in advance it's going to work, and it does. And the remote then changes and shifts, and your car takes you where you want. Those are simple examples. But truly, dear ones, that is what we are saying. You have to trust these things are real, and that beyond that which is human, there's something spectacular called you. Your soul is immense. We told you many times that as often as we wish to define it, you can't. Because what you first want to know is where and how big, and there are no answers. It's everywhere. If I ask where and how big is God, it's everywhere. And you would acknowledge that, and your spiritual systems acknowledge that. To the extent, listen to this, that loving God can listen to 7 billion prayers at the same time. You have given allowance for something spectacular, multidimensional energy called God. And now I teach you that you are a part of that energy. You are part of the creation of all things. You have God inside. At whatever level you want to think about, you have God inside. This gives you permission to go across that bridge and touch that which is your soul. What have I asked you, even in this 2-day section? My partner has mentioned, I have mentioned so many times, what is the best question? You could ask Spirit. It was said on this stage today by your keynote speaker. Dear Spirit, tell me what it is I need to know. There it is yet again. Now, how is it, as my partner says, that he never met the one that presented today for 2 hours, and yet she gave the same message? How is that possible? And the only answer that makes any sense at all is that it drips with a common truth of God. It is spectacularly accurate. And so many will tell you the same thing because they have found this truth. And the beauty of a truth that is found today, it reflects the magnificence of the human being. Nothing can happen on this planet without you. Angels are not going to come down and solve the war. You're not going to have a troop of beings come from the other side of the veil and touch Congress. None of these things are in the works. All of this will be done by you. You, the old souls, all of the yous who are listening to this. Do you think this is a task that you cannot do by yourself? There is no such thing as by yourself. And that was given to you today. Let's go to woe for a moment. Rather than having you cross the bridge today that is always crossed in this metaphor of touching the soul, I'm going to tell you the story about woe's crossing. And you can come with us if you choose. Woe shows up, and he knows that today is very, very different. The guide that he expected would teach him is gone. In the 14th episode of Woe's teaching, that beautiful guide that had wandered him through his life story, the guide that had given him so many loving attributes about who he was and presented him with outrageous ideas that now he understood were real. That guide was named Yusha. And in the 14th episode, there was no guide. And he learned from those who had watched him come and go that they had seen him talking to himself. There was no guide. And that shocked him at first, and then he smiled. And he made sense of what Yusha had told him about those which were multidimensional guides, the energy that he carries with him, and he realized he was teaching himself, and his soul was the one who was doing the talking all along. Is it possible that you have something called a higher self that you could sit in front of, and that higher self would start giving you information that you needed to know? Dear ones, that is built into you. That is why the idea of the higher self is so accurate and true and has been with you for many decades. What if that which was the higher self was the master teacher of you? A piece of your soul that has come in with you, besides those which are guides. I told you had an entourage. You can't count them because there's no counting in a multidimensional state. Woe had now learned that, and there he stood. And in front of them, all of them, his guides, his higher self, the entourage around him, and Woe, he saw the bridge. And so I'm going to invite Woe to cross, and you're going to come with me as he does. Woe, it's time for you to find out who you really are. Woe, perhaps you would like to meet Yusha in another place. Woe is very interested. And so we're going to take Woe across the bridge. And I want you to come with Woe, because Woe is you. He is you. She is you. In this particular way. Woe, take my hand. Let's go. Woe doesn't know what's going to happen. He has no idea about the idea at all of going to a multidimensional place which is his own. But he crosses the bridge with me, hand in hand, because he is so intuitive now. He recognizes truth. He knows it's safe. It is safe. And he sees the mist which obfuscates everything beyond it in the middle of the bridge. And Woe smiles and he says, I know what this is. This is the test of pure intent. If I go through the mist, it means that I am unafraid. Did you hear that today? Woe understood because he was taught earlier that fear will actually disassemble love. Disassemble. Annihilate. He has no fear. He smiles because he knows what's coming to some degree. And he trusts that even if he doesn't understand it, he'll experience it. Woe walks through that mist with me to the other side of that bridge where things don't make any sense. It's almost like a dream world where things are there but should not be there. But woe does not fear, because there's something extremely familiar about it. Welcome home, woe. This is who you are. This is the magnificence. How big do you think it might be, woe? Didn't you have experiences even when you were taught by Yusha that took you to places you didn't think you could go, and examined your life in a way that you didn't think it could be examined, and he said yes. This is your soul, woe. It has no bounds. More than that, this is reality. This, woe, is real. And what is on earth that you have come from is a partial reality, incomplete. And it's where you live for a while. And then you come back and live it more. And then you come back, but you always come home. This is home. It belongs to you. The essence of you is here. Woe was loving all this and understanding all of this. It was not a place at all. It's almost like he stepped into the most comfortable thing he could ever step into, himself. His sacred self was there, and he was almost walking within it. Odd it was. Didn't seem to be outside or inside. He couldn't figure it out. And then he realized he didn't have to. He just sat there, basking in this majesty that he recognized as eternal. Whoa, you are eternal. You've been told that by Yusha. Well, I'd like you to go inside for a moment into a place. It's not the place where we normally go into the Circle of 12. There's no theater, but we have been to this place before. We have taken many on this journey to different areas, you might say, of your soul, all metaphors for something else. And this will be as well. Woe goes through a door. You always go through a door. There's a name on the door, and we told you what the name was the last time we did this in another exercise. We told you it was heroes in the making. And we gave you the story about you, dear ones, each of you, at the wind of birth, and what it was like when you decided to come into this planet at this point in time. There's a lot of you, you know. Or do you? Woe went through that same door with that same title into a very, very large room. He couldn't decide whether that room was inside or outside either, because when he looked up, it looked like he was looking at the heavens, but it was more of a planetarium. In other words, he could feel that there was a limit to the sky, and yet as blank as it was, as dark as it was, he realized there was more to it. He walked up to the chair that he was going to sit in, and he recognized that there was something going to happen because there was a chair facing another. He was going to have a conversation with someone. He stood there for a moment, and out from almost nowhere came somebody that he recognized, named Yusha. Again, the metaphor of his own guide set was walking toward him, saying, "It is good to see you again, my friend. Welcome to the most magnificent thing that you have ever seen. You." Sit in the chair, Woe. Let's have a lesson. Woe was overwhelmed with love. There he was, Yusha. He thought he'd lost him, or he wouldn't see him until he died. And Woe sat in the chair waiting. There are a lot of things in this metaphor and this year and a half that are unbelievable, because there are those who would say, "Well, I've gone on this journey and it's all pretend and it's all visualization. I can't really do this until I'm dead." I want to tell you something. You're not getting it. Yes, you can. This is your lineage. It is your power, your force, if you want to say, to be able to cross into that which is you, the sacred you, while you're on the planet. That's the teaching. That's the metaphor. It's not just a visualization or a meditation. And Woe sat there. Appearing above him, getting his attention, were seeming stars in the sky. He couldn't figure it out. They weren't really stars. They didn't glisten, and they were in perfect focus, and every one was a bright light, and there were just an enormous amount of them. It's a huge room. Yusha, what are these? And Yusha stopped for a moment, and he said, "Are you ready for something, Woe, that you won't understand?" And Woe said, "I am." And Yusha said to him, "We have created this for your understanding and for those who may listen, so they would understand, and for your teaching in the future, Woe, so they will understand. It's a metaphor. There's a lot of them." Woe said, "It looks like 1,000,000 dots at least." And Yusha looked at Woe and said, "Well, actually 36 million. Woe recognized instantly that with a clarification of the number there must be something within it. Something was hiding. Yusha was the guide that day. Right now, Yusha was the teacher those days, right now. And he continued. They represent almost every old soul on the planet. Well, 36 million. Well, they represent approximately 1/2 of 1% of the Earth's population. And whoa, every single one is an old soul. Through eons of time, many generations, many what we will call dispensations of energy shift, many cycles, many civilizations, these are the ones who have gone through them. They have something in common with you, Woe. So have you. I told you that earlier, Yusha said. For those in this room, specifically today, watching live, that's you as well. There will be thousands who hear this, listen to this later, to judge for themselves where they feel that they're in that grouping. You know if you're an old soul. Perhaps you've just been waiting to hear that you are. There's always that issue of self-doubt. But those in front of me now, listen up. This is for you. For you are Woe, and he is you. And then Yusha said, Woe, something amazing is going to happen that can only happen with a multidimensional consciousness, with the field, with the idea that there's a universal consciousness. We're going to do something for you. All 36 million are going to give you a message. Woe did not know what to make of that. How long is that going to take? And Yusha said, in a moment, in front of you will be somebody you love. Somebody who's passed. But it's not really them. It is, but it isn't. You see, there is no individuality when it comes to this kind of consciousness. Soul consciousness belongs to all. That's the idea of the field on the planet. And so you think that there is one kind of consciousness for each individual. Indeed, on earth you are linear. Here you are not. Therefore, they can all talk as one. One can talk as all. And they are going to do that now, in the persona of the one that appears in the chair. Suddenly, all of the lights above him dimmed, and instead there was a very bright light in the chair in front of him. And as it took shape, he recognized the one he had loved the most in his life. Perhaps it's different for you, but for him, the metaphor was obvious. Somebody he loved and trusted and missed was going to show up and give him a message. It's important that you understand the metaphor of this so that you are comfortable with the message and understand it's true and it's beautiful. There's someone in your life who perhaps is either here or not here, who might be the one in the chair for you, for those listening, for those in the room. But for Woe, it was his mom. And there she was. And he was so grateful for this moment. So grateful. Those in the Circle of 12 experience have gone through this one before. And we've done this for you. That you can go to that place which is your soul, and you can go right to those you've loved and lost. And dear ones, that is real. What did you learn today from the Navy commander who walked the stage and gave you validation after validation of how real it is to be with a soul who seemed to be gone? It's real. For you, whoever this is, will be real. For Woe, more than real. And she smiled and said, Woe, I never left. I simply changed and shifted into another kind of energy. Woe, I have loved you from the moment I seem to have left this planet. Woe, I see you. I know you. I know you felt my love. And indeed, he says, Mom, I have. I knew that. Somehow I knew that. Thank you for validating it for me. Yusha interrupts and says, it's more than a metaphor, Woe, because your mom is an old soul. You chose her before you came. And she taught you well because you were ready to accept the last 14 lessons we had given. 13 of me present. And Woe said, what is she going to do? And Yusha said, she's going to give you instructions. As 36 million souls with a single consciousness for what you're going to do and what your instructions are going to be to bring this earth into a new energy of peace and kindness and compassion. How long is that going to take? Woe is still linear, just like you are, with questions that are linear, absolute. You want to have this question answered, that question answered. You want to know about this and that. That's not what's going to happen. And he said, please tell me. All 36 million of you, all together in that visualization of my mother, smiling at me and filled with compassion and kindness that I knew all my life from her. I'm ready to hear it, and I will do it, and I'll believe it. And she looked at him and said, here are your instructions from the group. Love is quiet. Love does not puff itself up. Love is filled with all the kindness and the positive things imaginable and sheds the negative things away so easily. Love does not confront. Love does not react. It listens. All of the attributes of mastery that were given to you in the teachings, perhaps of Yusha or others, represent love. Here are your instructions. Take love and hold it as high as you can, and go from this place and change the planet. Woe didn't really understand how that could change anything. He loved a lot. But then he understood it was something bigger. It was the love of the creating source. One word means so many things to you, dear ones. There are some languages where there are many words for love, depending upon the kind of love. In my partner's language I'm giving you now, there's only one. But this love is supreme. And that's the love that is being told him by the collective consciousness of all the old souls on the earth, 0.5% of all that are here. It's clear what is going on now. And Yusha says, when you go from this place, I want you to envision that you are not alone, that there is a consciousness of all of these with you, doing the same thing together you are. Well, find a time intuitively to send this to others in the planet, and you will be joined by those, because it's a timeless state, this multidimensionality. There is no time. So whatever time you choose to do it, they'll all be there. Figure that one out. Woe didn't want to go. He was in front of somebody so special that represented the old souls that now he realized he was one of. That there was a task at hand, and that's why he had come. Hero in the making. Woe, you. And so Yusha said, as he disappeared yet again, the words, Woe, stay as long as you want, and when you're finished, you'll be taken back to earth instantly. Stay in this place which is your soul. Stay, even for 3 minutes, and enjoy the multidimensional magnificence of you. This is absolute truth. Whoa. It truly is reality. It truly is reality. Stay. And so it is.
Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. And there would be those who would say the transition is too smooth. That it's the man pretending in the chair yet again for his group. And if that is what you think, dear human being, then that is what you think. And there is nothing here in the room that is going to push and pull or persuade. For the human being and their free choice is honored above all things. There are many ways to discover the divinity inside. One of them is this way. By understanding that these messages could be significant, they come from the other side of the veil. They are angelic, if you can even define that. If you were to ask human beings if they would believe in a higher source, they would say yes. If you ask a human being what form that would take, they would be varied in their answers. And some of them would say that channeling is appropriate, and some would say it is not. And the ones who would say it is not, however, would go into the forest and take the hand of a tree and feel God inside. And there is no difference. Blessed is the human being who finds their divinity and the solace and the peace that they need in any way that suits them. And so it is not something that is presented for belief or for enjoyment. It is here to soothe that which needs to be soothed, to instruct that which needs to be instructed, to shake hands with a countenance that is divine within you. That is the purpose of the channeling of Kryon, of sitting in the chair. And before we begin the 11 questions, I have only one thing to say. There is a connection between what you see outside and what you have inside. And perhaps that will be one of the questions. For I already know what is formulating in the consciousness of the potentials of the 11 who sit in the chair. It is not mind reading. For there is part of you which is an entangled state with all, that is to say, all is known. Not what you're going to do, but the potentials of what you might, based upon what is happening in your life, based upon what it is you bring to the table, as he say. We know the issues of the moment. And every single one of you who sits in the chair, you are not a mystery to us. There's great love for every puzzle that sits in the chair. First question, please.
When you spoke of when we see outside is what we see inside, that has to do with my question. When I was sitting on the Grand Canyon wall this morning looking out, I started crying and saying, feeling I'm with my people. And I also live in Mount Shasta, where heaven and earth truly meet, and I'm with my people there. But what I have challenges with, Kryon, is when I go into the world in the big cities and the electromagnetic frequencies don't resonate with me there, and I feel as if I walk in two worlds, and I don't want to leave here or Mount Shasta. Tell me how to walk in those other places.
The human countenance is learning. And the biggest issue is learning to be more like your partner, who is Gaia. If you take a look at that which you gaze upon, which is the trees, the rocks, and all those things that you find to be glamorous in a way that is ageless and is beautiful, you feel peace, do you not? What are you pouring into the air? Human beings. And what are you polluting the ocean with? Human beings. Let me ask you this. Is Gaia anxious? No. No. There is something there that Gaia knows and has figured out a great long time ago. And that is what you are to learn. Number one, that human beings must go through gyrations of mistakes in order to find solutions. Number two, that there is an evolutionary process at hand of consciousness, which we will talk about even more on what you would call Friday night. And this evolutionary consciousness shift is a promise that human beings are changing. And part of what they are changing is exactly what irritates you. There is going to be a revolution of common sense. It's going to happen slowly. The revolution of common sense means that there will be an alliance with Gaia that will echo the ancients. You look out upon the canyon as the ancients did. Let me ask you this. What is the first ceremony attribute of any of the indigenous on the planet? And let me tell you what they are. Number one, to honor Gaia, and number two, to honor the ancestors. You are your own ancestor, dear one, because you are an old soul on the planet. You are an old soul. And so the old soul in you is disturbed by what you would call new invention, by things that would seem insulting to that which you know is precious. Know this. These things are in progress of change. So here is my advice to you. Be more like Gaia. Smile when you see these things and know that there'll come a day when they won't be that way. That is what your instructions are. Be at peace with these things. Change what you can in yourself. And let others see your change, so they will see how precious and beautiful it is. Question 2.
Hello, Kryon. It's so wonderful to speak with you finally, after listening to you for 6 years. In 2006, I received a partial translation of works you had done that described the purpose of the lighthouse and how the lighthouse is to embody the light, and that by doing so, those in the darkness are looking for it. At the beginning of this year, I experienced that change, but I have been going through that process for quite some time, but it anchored into me. My question is that the more light I'm anchoring into myself and the more alignment that I'm becoming into, the more separated I start to feel from those around me, my family and my friends, and I find myself crying a lot because I have to let go, and that's hard. So my question is that how do I better integrate that? How does anyone integrate that change when you're moving into your soul's purpose but leaving everyone else behind?
Another question from an old soul. And it's a good one. How do I answer this that will please you? I cannot. First of all, let us speak of you, the integration that you have described, that is what you have described and has been more recent than before, is all accurate and true. And the events of your life to create it are on purpose. And you find yourself in a strange position. You have family and friends who are starting to look at you differently, and you know that. And they wonder about you. The masters who walk the earth, how do you think their families felt when they started being awed? You're not going to like the answer in one respect, and you're going to love it in another. And I will tell you this, dear ones, those who do not wish to be with you because you are of not like mind with him, you are going to have to love them and let them go. There's nothing you can do to bring them into an enlightened fold if they do not choose to go there. Now here's the good news. Nothing is going to happen to them because they're not accepting you. There is no judgment. And the only reason that you sit and ask the question is because you are sad for you. And you know that. And how can we change that? For they're all right. They're the same as they always were. It is you who are shifting and finding that which is different from what they want. This is the good news. There are dozens in this room who are ready to be your family. And they will fill the space that empties itself in your heart from those who are retreating from you. Believe me, if you'll let them, this new family of God is related to you also. I want you to accept this and be peaceful with it and know that it is appropriate and it's time. Next question.
I was wondering if you could shed some light on the relationship between information and consciousness.
Information lays there static, like words on a page. Even the most profound information I could give you now about who you are, how things work, who your seed biology, what the trees have seen. The information that I could give you about how the canyon formed, which I've done from this spot, just lays there on the page, seemingly. It does nothing. Consciousness is the bowl of active participation of information. It's when you take the information and empty it into the bowl of consciousness is when you get the magic called discernment. The discernment engine is partly biological. That means there's intellect involved and mostly emotional and spiritual, which means there is another part involved which we will call innate. A cauldron, a mixture, a soup of analyzing the information. Now when they come together perfectly, then when you read the words or hear it, it's instant understanding. Let me tell you the difference. Right now, no matter what I say, is received in many different ways from this group, depending upon who they are, the depth of their wisdom, their old souls, their Akash, why they're here, what they're ready for, whether they're in transition or not, or whether they have had things settle for them and they're peaceful. They will receive the information differently. Some of those in the audience right now receive the information and they discern it instantly, and it goes into their consciousness and becomes part of them. So the information therefore has a confluence of energy. And they would say the information is energy. There are others who will look at the information, not deal with it at all, and it's just words on the page, and to them it has no active element. You see the difference? So the real difference between information and consciousness is what you do with it. Are you ready to hear, understand, and discern in real time? If you are, dear ones, you've captured enough light so that this process is yours. We encourage that process, for this is the process of the future. Oh, by the way, most of the children of the planet already have it. You can't look at them and tell them an untruth, or give them a little white lie, or any of the other things that adults do so easily in the past, for they'll look at you and they'll know better. Next question.
Hello, Kryon. What is it that you would like the people of New Zealand to know about the part we have to play in this world? Thank you.
New Zealand faces an issue at the moment. There are so many things wrong there, as you know. And the thing that rings so wrong, how could you be such an important piece of Lemuria and have things going so difficult? Top to bottom, there are problems with environmental control. Not doing it right, and you know that. Problems with the economy, worse than most people even know. There's more. There's so much more. I would like to tell you, this precious place is in the process of recalibration. It has to be. For what's going to happen there next is going to take 2 generations, dear one. There are old souls in New Zealand I would like to talk to you right now if you want to take a message. You've got to hold a light. Don't move away. Go to where the ground does not shake, dear, because there's going to be more shaking where it did before. And it won't be that far away. This whole country, this island nation, such an important part of the earth, spiritually, has to go through a recalibration, a revolution of consciousness in order to come out of the slump that has been given to it and had put into it by itself. There'll come a day when you're not the little sister to the continent next to you, where they're going to come want to see you because you have spiritual attributes, healing, success. It will happen. That is the answer to your question. Hold a light where you are. Anyone you know who is there. We need light. Let the old souls remain where they are. It's not easy. Next question.
Greetings, Kryon. Thank you for your love. You have mentioned several times in sessions like this one that all light workers present will be reincarnating. My question is it possible to work towards not reincarnating anymore in a dimension like this? And if not, what happens with the work that Eastern spirituality has been doing for several thousand years about being liberated from the chain of birth and death? Thank you.
Let us make some definitions. There are several kinds of death. You are told, perhaps, by elders that death is wrong and is bad and you don't want it. That is not what we see. For death is rejuvenation. That is what we see. Ask an old soul in here how many times they've been to the earth. And if you could talk to the innate of the old soul, they would say, death has no sting. The worst part of death is the sorrow of those left behind. The one who goes through death, I would like to tell you, that soul is celebrating it. They come back with a new body. They carry in their Akash everything they ever learned. Old soul, did you know that? They come back enhanced past any lifetime they've ever had. In the birth-death cycle, that is a celebration. Now what happens when you die and you have nothing? Misery, no enlightenment. Perhaps you're at a place in a country, in a civilization where it's been tough and hard and you're dying young. And now you're going to go back and do it again. Birth and death and birth and death, and that's a different cycle. isn't it? What old soul wants to be released from rejuvenation? Most will say, no. Now granted, I know who is here, and in the human mind, I know what you're thinking. You're tired. And if I would say to you, are you looking forward to coming back? You would say, no. I'm done. I know that. Because this is the human being in their 3D-ness who gets tired and doesn't want to think about going through it again. What if I told you, dear one, you're going to come back, you're going to have a young body, you're going to awaken with enlightenment. That you're going to have a common sense factor that is beyond anything that you ever had as an old soul, and you're going to start where you left off and keep going with youth. As that sounds so bad. And you're going to continue what you came for. That's not a cycle to be released from. So, dear one, there is no release from that cycle. There is only an enhancement of your understanding of what cycle you are in. I know what cycle you are in. And it's time for you to think differently about it. I want you to look forward to what comes next. Humanity is starting to become more enlightened, and that is to say, there'll come a time when even the furthest tribes in the furthest parts of the earth will have fresh water, and they won't have disease. They'll have time for introspection. Their leaders will have more integrity. This time is not that far away. The poverty of the planet will change. The things that you see today which are unconscionable and make you cry will start to shift. Humans are going to figure out why there are so many humans and stop it. Question Kryon gets answered asked all the time is, what are we going to do about population explosion? And the answer is, you know very well what to do. And already there are societies that will have plenty of new children, but they have zero growth. Or they figured it out. They figured it out. That requires the human being become smarter and wiser. And dear one, that's going to happen. So the answer to this is there is no cycle to be released from when it comes to the cycle of light. Next question.
Hello, Kryon. You've always taught us of our connection to Gaia. And recently you've shared with us how Gaia has been here for possibly 4 billion years, getting ready for the existence of human beings on the planet, and we've been here for the very last moment of existence. And I know there's been a plan in place to let Gaia evolve over that time to prepare for us. And I was wondering if you can share with us some of those experiences, including specifically the days of dinosaurs and the evolution of the planet up to this point, and how it prepared us, Gaia, for us at this time.
Let me answer that quickly. If you look at this logically, and I'm speaking logically, with the intellect, and you study Earth's history, it doesn't make sense that you would have mammals of the size and the complexity millions of years ago and no human beings. It's almost like there was a hand that said, not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet, and you'd be right. Someday, the anthropologists will calculate the odds against what happened. And you will see it manifested in the math, the P factor. And then you'll know something was happening now. The anthropologists will back this up. The biologists know what I'm going to tell you now. Life had 5 starts and failed 4 times. It took thousands of years. That's just life. In other words, there was a hand holding back everything. 5 starts. The 5th one only got it right because there was the evolution of something called photosynthesis. There is evidence of the 4 other starts for you to look at and see. There is a plan. And so what I can say to you that is the short answer is everywhere science will look, they're going to discover something that they did not expect. And that is say that there is no evolutionary common sense to the evolvement of the human being. You should have been here 1,000,000 years ago, and you weren't. And I will tell you more about that on Friday as well. Next question.
Hi, Kryon. Ever since I was young, I've had a number of near-death experiences. Since then, I have studied with different people who also have had near-death experiences. The thing is, each one of them had a different reason why a person goes through a near-death experience. And I was wondering if you could talk about near-death experiences and if what really is behind the veil. Thank you.
When you were young, you are young.
I mean, in this body, in this lifetime.
I see. This is complicated, and there are many reasons for what you would call near-death experiences. But let me tell you about one attribute for the light worker near-death experience. Now, this will be one who is involved in what you would call the metaphysics, beyond the physics. This is one who is deeply involved in perhaps spiritual work, and then will have a near-death experience. And I will tell you what it is. It is that karmic marker which had you die. One of the things that happens with a lighthouse, with one who is starting to assume that which is the study of their own mastery and divinity, is that they change their karma. In fact, karma is an old energy system that keeps you learning on the planet. When you reached a certain point, not that long ago, when you started getting into the precession of the equinoxes, the 36-year window of which you are now in the middle of, called 2012, things started to shift. When I arrived through my partner in 1987, and then on through 89, in that 2-year period, I told you could drop your karma. When you drop your karma, that means that the markers of possibility and propensity don't carry the weight that they used to, but they're still there as potentials. The sickness that almost kills you, the automobile accident that you almost recover from and then finally do, the near-death experience which is accompanied with it, is your death that might have occurred had you not awakened. Do you understand? Now, this is a revelation for 3 of you in the audience. I know what's going on here. Yes. Yes, you saved your life. For the old karmic markers, if you don't do anything about them, the propensities will march right to the place and fulfill themselves. This is the human being who is not manifesting their own reality. It's the human being who floats with whatever is there and never wakes up to the opportunities that we teach about. That is my job. Mastery is yours if you choose, including not only passing the marker of death, but rejuvenating your body far faster than you ever think possible and lasting a long time on this planet. Next question.
Hi, Kryon. What can you tell us about new human race which was designed recently?
The new human race. The seeds are sitting in front of me. Don't you understand that? Do you not understand your lineage? Let me tell you something that the ancestors would love to tell you. First of all, you have their face. If you see a group of indigenous honoring the elders which have passed, I would like to tell you what they're doing. They're honoring the wisdom of themselves. That it can be passed. Why would they honor elders which are gone that had wisdom which is then gone? It isn't gone. Why isn't it gone? Because the ones who are doing the honoring have received it, not just through the stories, but it passes. The mantle, this is scriptural, the mantle of energy that belongs to the elder who was wise on death passes to the one in turn who then receives it at an innate level. That's Akashic inheritance. The new human race is you. Less than 0.5% of the humans on the planet now have to plant these seeds of passionate compassion, of one who is tolerant in all situations, who sees the glory of Gaia and feels that which is divine, which is slow to anger and will never send their children to war. This is the new human race. And the seeds are here. You are not only your ancestors. Akashic inheritance will create the future. Who are you going to be, dear one? And I sit here in a timeless state with the potentials of who is going to be. I can see the countries that are going to arise, not because I can tell the fortune, but because I can see the propensities and the potentials working. And I can tell you that who you're going to be is going to be profound. There'll come a day when you look back, and these days you'll call the age of barbarism. You think you're in a modern society? You're not. Ask a Pleiadian what they went through, and they'll tell you you're right on track, and they'll also tell you what's next. And it's not that bad. For 20 years, in the face of horror, bad news, doom and gloom, predictions, suffering, I have given you news that flies in the face of all of it. And I will tell you, all you have to do is look back 50 or 60 years to the way the earth used to be and compare it to today. You didn't have your next world war that you should have had. There's all manner of things that you're putting together instead of tearing apart, but you don't live long enough to feel it. Only history will show you I'm right. Already I'm right. Give another 50 and you'll really see it. That's the answer. It's you. Another question?
Dear Kryon, it's been a while since you talk about the Jews and about Israel and the Middle East. What information you would like to share with us? What potential you can see?
Again, ask please.
I'm asking about the Jews and about Israel. It's been a while since you talked about that, and it's an open question.
Oh, I would ask you even to ask it a third time because that's biblical, but I won't put you through it. Is this not the crux of everything? Did I not say 20 years ago, as go the Jews, go earth? And I will give you the answer yet again. The joke was the repeat. If I'd had you do it 3 times, there's the energy of the catalyst from an Israeli asking about his own. The Jews will not be able to put this together, dear one. And you know that. And neither will the West. And you know that. What's going to happen in the Middle East eventually, as we see it, and the potentials are already rolling for it, is that it will be done from an Islamic country, whose young people will rise up and decide that they wish to clean up the Middle East, and they're going to start by not believing what their parents had told them. And they're going to stop hating just because they're told to hate, or what happened 100 years ago, or 1,000, or even 2,000. And they're going to hold out their hand in a way that Israel cannot say no. Middle Easterners with Middle Easterners, former enemies looking at each other in the eye, all under 40. That's what we see. It's against all odds. It's against everything that's happening, against everything that your news will tell you, or anybody in your country, or your leadership. My partner asked me, he said, will I be here to see it? And I said, of course. And he was smiling and so happy until I told him he'd be another race. How long is it going to take? Longer than you want. It's generational. When you walked in the desert, what was the message? For 40 years you walked in the desert. What was the message? Israeli? You know what it was? You can't take the consciousness of slaves and put them in the promised land. So what had to happen? They had to die out. You may have a whole generation that's needed for those who would teach what your parents told you to disappear. And tell those like you who would tell your children to be tolerant and not teach them the ugly history facts. It's going to take a while. But I'll tell you this. I see the potentials, and it is in progress. Thank you. Is there another?
Hello, Kryon.
Hello.
You have told us that the Lemurian choir will create a planetary shift in December. I'd like to know what kind of planetary shift and how it will occur.
1987, you had the harmonic convergence. What did you feel? Good for a day? You just celebrate it for a day? The 11/11, significant. Very significant. And then did you go home and when you arrived, everything was different? No. Now, from then to today, have you seen any changes? It took a while for you to say yes, because the time needed to go by. You have the same thing in the Lemurian signal. It's an activation marker. And it does many things. Some of them not to be disclosed until 21 December. And I'll be there to disclose them. But I've already told you, it's a two-way signal. Number one, you've said we arrived and we made it. We're starting to put things together instead of tearing them apart. We see the evolution of consciousness. We're starting to understand that we have a spiritual complement. Even in your religions, it is acknowledged that you are part of God. You don't have to be that which is New Age. Christ himself, one of the masters, said, I am the Son of God and so are you. When Muhammad walked into the cave and met the angel, the only reason he could talk to the angel face to face without vanishing and burning up is because they had an alliance. There was divinity in both of them. Every master. Moses talked to the burning bush. We should stop calling it a burning bush. It had a name. It was angelic. That's what interdimensional energy looks like to a human being. A seeming fire that does not consume itself. It was an angelic entity named Kryon. Did you know that? I've been around a long time. And the master he was, and what he did, set the mold for the ones to follow and the ones before. So what am I saying? Time. So the marker will be set. Energies will be exchanged that will then change what we would call the formula for what comes next. 18 more years you have of this alignment to plant seeds like a farmer plants them at the right season. Before that comes which he knows will let them grow. That's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. Now that carried an 11 energy all over it. And yet you were 10. How did that happen? I think you wanted to sit in the last chair. Number 11. Question, please. It's interesting, I see you as number 10.
My question would be one thing, but I've decided I want to ask a different one.
How odd.
We are told to speak in conscious language and say what we mean when we speak it. But so many of us are still learning how. Is there an easy or a shortcut to do this? I'm impatient.
I want to tell you why you're number 10. Ten in numerological terms is a 1. There's new beginnings in your life. It's already starting. I think you understand what I'm saying, dear. I don't know if you're aware of it. And you're asking questions that are important. How do you carry around mastery when everybody around you is an idiot? They're not, but this is how it seems. When you walk into old energy and you see mistakes and mistakes and mistakes, when you wish to speak a truth and not sound like you're scolding, or that you know better, or that you're something and they're not. So what would that language be? It's a concept. I want you to speak compassion in your life. Only compassion. Every time you open your mouth, I want you to think compassionately. There's a new beginning going on with you. I think you know what I'm talking about. Number 10. And this is the compassionate language we want all in this room to know about. Before you open your mouth around those who are not believers, what do you see? Do you see that what they're doing perhaps is going to sow the seeds of their own demise? Or you want to cry because of the foolishness there? Or the energy just doesn't suit an answer? You solve it by the language of compassion. Sometimes there's nothing to say. And so be quiet. That is a language too. And sometimes out of your mouth will come loving things that will not offend. They'll know you're safe to talk to. And that's the key. So that they'll always feel that they can come to you. And some of them will, because of what's going on in your life. Thank you. And so it is in the time we've had together that we have sowed some seeds and given some information and even had some fun. I want you to know this in closing and in passing, that's critical. You cannot have the love of God and compassion in your heart and walk around depressed. When you walk out of the building and you see the majesty of Gaia, it yells at you that you are part of the system and it is honoring you. Like you look at the trees, it looks at you and says, welcome back. Now let's make a difference together. And so it is.